This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to do a comparison smackdown between two Asus tablets. Right here we have the new Asus Transformer Pad TF300, and this is the incumbent, the Transformer Prime TF201, the one with the metal back, the one that costs $100 more. We're going to smack them down right now. So here we have them side by side, and you can see from the front view, boy, they look just alike. That's why we started off showing you the back views, because that's how you tell them apart. This is the TF300, this is the new one, this is the Transformer Prime TF201. Obviously they're pretty similar. Their logo is a little more reflective on the newer model, but other than that, you're looking at exactly the same front design. Now, in terms of displays, you're not looking at quite the same thing, because the Transformer Prime has that Super IPS Plus display, and that means you can put it in plus mode, drain your battery more quickly, but you'll get up to 600 nits of brightness. Now, that's useful if you want to use it outdoors to combat glare and to still be able to see the display. Otherwise, right now we have them both on maximum regular IPS mode, and you can see they're very close. The Prime is still a little bit brighter, but I would say for indoor use, both of these are adequate, even outdoor use in the shade if you're just using it in straight IPS mode. The Transformer Prime has been out since, well, technically the end of December, though it was just about impossible to find one in the stores. They started to show up in January. They're still hard to get at this point. It sells for $499 for the 32 gig, $599 for the 64 gig model. The Transformer Pad TF300 seems to be a more plentiful supply here, at least initially at release in stores, and it sells for $379 for the 16 gig and $399 for the 32 gig. There is no 64 gig option, and with $20 separating the price, as I've said in our individual video reviews, I would certainly say just get the 32 gig for 20 bucks more. What else is different between these guys in terms of specifications? They're both running NVIDIA Tegra 3 quad-core CPUs. That's really quad-core plus one companion low-power core, and GeForce graphics with a 12-core GPU here. But we've got 100 megahertz difference in clock speed, slightly different CPU used. This has the T30, and the TF300 has the T30L. Again, it's clocked about 100 megahertz slower, and graphics are clocked at about 200 megahertz slower. But experientially and in terms of benchmarks, they're pretty darn close. We're seeing about 75 points difference in synthetic benchmarks. And in terms of responsiveness of the tablets, their ability to play 3D games, including Tegra's own THD, Tegra 3 optimized games, they're neck and neck. You're not really losing anything there. But still, for those of you who are specs conscious, there's a difference. They both have a gig of RAM, got DDR3, and the newer and cheaper TF300. Now, in terms of synthetic benchmarks, we actually haven't seen much of a difference in memory benchmarking there, but things do move forward. DDR3 is now state of the art. We'll probably start to see that in more tablets in the future. The other difference is something that you can't see, but makes you feel better. This guy has Gorilla Glass. The TF300, being $100 less, does not have Gorilla Glass. It just has standard hardened glass, according to Asus. They don't say exactly what hardened glass means, but there it is. Gorilla Glass on the Prime. So the Prime overall is the more upscale model, and the big difference, of course, is the back. The Prime has a metal back. It looks really nice. It's very thin. It's thinnest, one of the thinnest tablets on the market. It's like 0.32 inches, and it weighs 1.29 pounds. The TF300 weighs a little bit more. It's 1.4 pounds, and it's 0.38 inches. So, in terms of thickness, we're not talking a lot there, but there is a bit of difference, and a teeny bit of difference in the weight. Do you feel the weight difference so much holding them? When you first pick it up, you might say, yeah, I can tell which one's lighter. But beyond that, I would say you're going to suffer an equal amount of fatigue with either one after you hold it for an hour, and neither is that bad. This is genuine ABS plastic, and they put a swirl embossed pattern here to try and make it a little bit classier, a little bit more interesting, and to give it a little bit of grip. Not super effective in terms of grip, but it's certainly not as slippery as the Prime is. One thing I will say about the Prime after living with it for 4 months is it is not the most comfortable tablet to hold, because it is so skinny, and those edges, because there's a pretty steep taper on the side, really digs into the palms. And for those of you who've owned the Prime or have read about it, you know that there are some other issues associated with that. Like this quick cutaway over here, it leaves part of the port exposed. This is your micro HDMI port, so not much support there. It can be difficult to get HDMI cable to plug in solidly. This is the micro SD card slot, which the card, yes, it does stick out just a teeny weeny bit, just enough so that if you pick it up, you might shoot it out across the room, since it's spring-loaded. Another complaint of Prime owners. And lastly, there's the docking connector down here, which again is fairly exposed. You see, as we hold it like this, it's actually, well, it's open on the back, isn't it? So some folks have managed to break their connectors just plugging in the charger. Now, Asus has addressed some of these issues here, and they've reduced the amount of taper. It's a little bit more straight-sided, but I would still prefer an even straighter side. We still have some exposure of the connector here, but it's much improved and probably less likely to break that connector off just in normal careful use. On this side here, the HDMI port, again, there's more support. There's still a taper, so it's a little bit more exposed at the bottom. And the SD card slot, well, we don't have a card in here right now, but if you've watched our video review of this, and you should, you know that you cannot shoot this card out by accident. It goes in there, it sits in there flush. Feels better in the hand, easier to grip. That little bit of thickness and the taper improvement really does help. And here we have them right on top of each other, so you can see the thickness is pretty darn close on it. And you can see that difference in the taper. Also, the power button is easier to operate on the new TF300. It's really a pain on the Prime, honestly, because it's almost flush and there's so much taper on there, your finger just kind of rolls off, so I usually have to try a couple times to get it turned on. This guy works well, but I don't find that I hit it by accident. Since these are both transformers, that means they both work with the Asus keyboard dock, but their docks are not interchangeable according to Asus, and I can tell you that because the TF300 is thicker, you really can't squeeze it into the slot for the Prime keyboard because it really is a tight fit. I'd be worrying about cracking the glass. I suppose you could take the Prime and stick it into the TF300's keyboard and have a color mismatch, but not so much motivation there because some of you probably have keyboard docks for the Prime already, but you don't have them for the new TF300 model. The design characteristic carries over. The Prime keyboard dock is metal. Looks nice. Feels nice. Both of them are kind of small. We're talking about 10.1-inch netbook size keyboards and trackpads here, but they get the job done if you want to have a keyboard, obviously, to enter data. This guy here has one of the buttonless trackpads. There's a line there where your clicker is, and the whole keyboard, rather the trackpad moves, but there's no dedicated clicker button. As we take a look at the keyboard dock for the Transformer Pad TF300, you can see it's in matching blue. When the tablet comes out in white and red, supposedly in June according to Asus, there'll also be matching keyboard docks for those too, so you've got the colors going there. It's blue plastic that matches the tablet itself. Otherwise, the design is identical, except for right here. We've got an actual real button over here for the trackpad now. And this trackpad actually works a little bit better, I find. It's very responsive and easy to use. You'll still run into the problem where you're going to accidentally hit the trackpad while typing, because we're talking about tight, constrained space here. But other than that, same functionality, both $149, both have a full-size SD card slot and a full-size USB host port on them, and the same keys. So when it comes to design and ergonomics, well, the Transformer Prime obviously wins for design. It's beautiful, it's metal, it's super thin, it's one of the lightest tablets you can buy. It's lovely to look at. The drawbacks, as we mentioned, that's where the TF300 wins in the ergonomics department. It's easier to hold, it's easier to operate the controls, and the ports are a bit better supported, though still I would say it's clear that Asus was going for looks a bit over actual functionality there, because those ports are still, well, not ideally super sturdy. In terms of touch sensitivity, the TF300 is a little bit more responsive to touch. I really haven't had any trouble with the Prime. Some people have complained that it was a little insensitive to touch, but mine's work pretty well, as does this guy. In terms of stability, there is a difference. I often see the wait or force close messages because applications take a bit too long to actually do things, particularly the web browsers, sometimes the Google Play market. It seems like anything that's actually accessing the internal storage on the device slows it down. Don't know why that is, but it is what it is. So those nasty little wait or close error messages that you get, that you can just wait. Usually the application responds. It's just taking longer than the operating system thought. You don't get them so much on the TF300. In fact, I have yet to get it with many days of heavy use of the web browser and applications. In any application or web browser, except for the Google Play market, where I was downloading many applications at once, if I was downloading 5 or so at a time, sometimes Google Play market would just go, yep, and get baffled for a little bit, and then would come back, and so I would just hit that wait button. But something to keep in mind. It seems like they've gotten this down. It's interesting, though, because they're running the exact same operating system, Android OS 4.03, Ice Cream Sandwich, very similar hardware inside, very similar set of drivers, all the kind of extra stuff that Asus adds in for NTFS file support over USB, USB Ethernet adapters, all that kind of stuff's the same. So it's pretty mystifying as what might be going on there in terms of that kind of stability issue. When it comes to Wi-Fi and GPS, well, there is a clear winner. We've got Wi-Fi analyzer running on both of these, showing us the signal strength for access points, and you can see that the TF300 is getting a significantly stronger signal here. And it's more noticeable as you move further from the access point. We're fairly close to our own access points right now, but so the difference in signal strength isn't that huge. But particularly when we run speed tests, there's a big difference, and the TF300 will get a much faster download and upload speed if you're, say, 25 feet from the router versus the Prime, which really starts to drop down. For example, we have 25 up and down megabit service, and if we're near the router, both of these guys will get 25 up and 25 down. But if we move 25 feet from the router, the TF300, which is a real reception bear, it's really good, we'll still get 25 up and 25 down, or pretty darn close. We'll say 23 maybe instead of 25, but really often 25. And this guy will drop down to about 12 megabit down and 12 megabit up. So something to keep in mind if you're working in areas that have poor Wi-Fi signal. Now, if you're always in places where you do have a good Wi-Fi signal, you're at home, you're in the same room with your router, that kind of thing, then it's pretty much a level playing field. Or if you have very fast service like we do, even if you drop down to 12 megabit per second, that's still more than fast enough to stream Netflix or any other kind of high-quality streaming media that you want. When it comes to GPS, we're not even going to bother launching GPS test applications here because we're indoors, even though we're close to a window, and the Prime just will not lock onto satellites. That's the way it is. That's a pretty famous issue at this point. This is a C1 serial number Prime, so it's not one of the very oldest models, but it's not one of the newest ones. And supposedly Asus has improved things a bit with the latest serial model numbers, but their solution in the US is to give away free GPS dongles, and that's a pretty big thing. It's like a submarine sandwich that clips on down at the bottom here. And we hear that it actually works pretty well if you don't mind clipping that big old dongle on the bottom. We're still waiting to receive ours. It takes about 2 weeks to get one of those. But you can contact Asus by the end of July, I believe it is, and get one of those for free. You can just sign up online. The Transformer Pad TF300, meanwhile, it has good signal reception for GPS, and we can get a fix indoors, and if you watch our video review of that, you'll see that in action. So it works just fine. Now keep in mind, because it does not have a 3G connection, you're going to either have to preload map data or use your mobile hotspot in your phone or a MiFi, something like that, to actually use either of these guys as a GPS and have map data available. But that said, yes, the GPS does work. The Wi-Fi works. The Bluetooth works. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth together also work on the TF300. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth together, if you've got a weak Wi-Fi signal to start with, can be a problem because they're both running near the same spectrum, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So say you've got some Bluetooth headphones or Bluetooth speakers plugged into your Prime, you might actually see connection drop-offs on Wi-Fi if you've already got a weak signal and you're running a Bluetooth stereo going. In terms of software, you get the same stuff pretty much on both of these guys. You get Asus's Splash Top remote bundle on here. You've got their little app locker, which is actually pretty handy, so you can lock your kids out of things that you don't want them using. We've got application backup if you want to back up your applications. Polaris Office is on here. Not the super fanciest UI version that's available, but it gets the job done. So you're looking at the same software bundle on both of these guys. Also, in terms of performance, they both are very fast. Each feels equally fast. Each runs applications just as fast. Neither of these has a custom UI. You're just looking at straight Android ice cream sandwich user interface. Playing Tegra 3 games like Riptide and Shadowgun runs equally well on both of these. We haven't been able to try Dark Meadow yet on the TF300. Some little bug in the deployment actually hid that from this TF300 at launch on the Android market, but NVIDIA tells us that by the end of today, in fact, you'll be able to download it and play that creepy, gorgeous, freemium game. And for those of you who want to read ebooks on these, you're going to get a similar experience on both. Don't worry too much about the 60-cycle refresh you're seeing here. That's just what the Transformer does, and it's picked up on the 60-cycle refresh that our HD camcorder also uses, and it's just a bit more noticeable here on a white background. Can your naked eye see this? No, it can't. So both of these are going to have equal text clarity. They have the same display resolution, 1280 by 800. They're both more than bright enough to read ebooks. This is a case when you often want to turn the brightness down to actually read a book. Don't want to burn your retinas. you can see that the Prime is a little bit warmer, and that's a little bit more color accurate actually. Tablet displays tend to run to the cool side, though. The TF300 isn't so bad, and if you watched our Transformer Pad TF300 versus Acer Iconia Tab A510 quad-core smackdown, you saw that the Acer is actually even cooler than that. But take that as what you will. If you like a warmer, whiter page, you're going to get that on the Prime. Both turn pages equally as quickly as you'd expect. We're running on pretty much the same hardware here and brains, and they're both equally as readable. In terms of web browsing, both of these come with the standard Android web browser, and you can download Adobe Flash. They both handle Adobe Flash equally as well, and again, both of them can play Netflix and streaming media of any kind, and even Amazon Prime Video, which uses Adobe Flash. The Transformer Prime has a 25 watt per hour battery, and the TF300 has a 22 watt per hour battery, so you're talking about a half an hour difference in run times there. Not a huge difference, but you're going down a little bit here with the less expensive tablet. Both of those keyboard docks have secondary batteries that charge up the primary batteries inside the tablet, same functionality there. So that's the Asus ePad Transformer Prime TF201 versus the Asus Transformer Pad TF300 or TF300T as it's called. You can go either way with that name, it seems like, in terms of marketing materials. And for those of you who are just looking to buy the tablet now, you don't already own a Prime, I would personally lean towards getting the blue on here. Yeah, it's a plasticky guy, it's blue and all that kind of stuff, but you know, it works pretty well, it's stable, you don't get those wait close error messages or as many force quit error messages on the tablet. It's $100 less money, it feels equally as fast, it benchmarks pretty darn close, and they've improved the ergonomics on it. That said, for those of you who want to use the tablet outdoors, the Super IPS display on the Prime has no parallel. Nobody else has anything like this in an Android tablet or any kind of tablet in terms of brightness. It really is that bright. And if you really like the chic metal, the whole quality thing, and the thin and light aspect of it, well, the Prime still has its appeal. If you already own the Asus Transformer Prime and you're thinking, well, should you side grade, sort of downgrade, is it an upgrade? It's quite a confusing thing here, isn't it? Because in some ways this guy is better than TF300, but obviously it has less high-end features, that kind of thing. I probably wouldn't unless you're really being deranged by your current Prime, or you really need the GPS and you don't want to have that submarine sandwich hanging off the chin here when you use the GPS. Otherwise, it's probably just not worth the hassle. Now, if you're all hot and excited to get an Android tablet with a Tegra 3 quad-core processor, that's understandable. Also consider the Acer Iconia Tab A510. We have a video review of that, and we've also done smackdowns between both of these guys on that tablet. And Toshiba has an Excite 10, not the Excite 10 LE, coming out in about, 3 weeks or so, that's going to have a quad-core Tegra 3. And I'm sure there are going to be more in the future. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Don't forget to watch our video review of each of these products and then the various smackdowns that we've done between these tablets and the Acer Iconia A510, and read our written reviews on mobiletechreview.com, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.